Dear ladies and gentlemen, I would like to welcome you to this KISSsoft webinar where we're going to speak about KISSsoft customizing. My name is Mr. Ilya Tsikur and I work in technical sales, and today I'm going to present you all the possible features that are related to KISSsoft customizing. Just a small thing for organization, I will not be able to hear you, but you're allowed to ask questions in the chat. And beside me, Mrs. Andrea Frey, she will take care of your live questions and comments. And maybe at the end of this webinar, maybe I'm going to point out some questions and some answers to them as well. I would like to also inform you that this is not a proper training for KISSsoft customizing. This is more to show you the possibilities and a bit how to use KISSsoft and how to customize it. So if you're interested in a more detailed training for these topics, you can also always visit our introductory trainings, which are held in Switzerland, Bubicon, and the next one is actually from the 7th till the 8th of March. Okay, so let us start. You can see on my PowerPoint slides the possibilities that you can actually see this iPhone version 10.5 with KISSsoft on it, and it's basically to show you what kind of things are possible. You can see that with KISSsoft you can customize your own databases. So for example, if you would like to add your own material data, or for example, add a cutter list which is present in your company, just to make sure that people who design, let's say, gears always have a proper tool that also exists in the company. We can also customize the result windows. So all the KISSsoft results that you get on the screen are being customizable, so you can actually change the output of the software as well. We're going to have a look at it in detail also in this presentation. Then maybe also something new, the dynamic user interface. This allows you basically to change the whole KISSsoft interface. Well, what you can see here, this is an example now of a cylindrical gear module. You can actually even add your own entries, something like material testing, for example, but you can also, for example, set the quality to be always 7 and make these fields non-editable. You can also define rules in KISSsoft. By rules, what do we mean? For example, if you are manufacturing some precision measurement devices, you might be using a very high quality, and you want to avoid that engineers who are using KISSsoft, let's say, enter a quality which does not comply to your company's standards. So these are called rules, and if the rule is not fulfilled, then KISSsoft will give you a message saying that the quality, for example, is too low. Then we're going to speak about the initial settings. In KISSsoft, initial settings, what do we mean by that? Is when you start KISSsoft, you might want to pre-select English to be as your standard language, or, for example, you could even create log files. What is a log file? I have several inquiries also from customers, especially from the IT, asking, is there a way to manage who is using the license and when, to generate such kind of report, especially to see who is using which calculation modules? This is possible in the initial settings, and I'm going to show it as well in this presentation. Another possibility is, for example, if you want to change some material in the database, and let's say, imagine you have a network license and you want to shift the whole database directory maybe on a specific path on your server where only 1 or 2 people have access to. So these things are also possible in the initial settings. As I said, you can enter your own tools into KISSsoft, and maybe one important point is also the COM interface. This is a very practical tool to allow communication between KISSsoft and other programs. such as Java, PHP, Microsoft products such as Excel, Access, and so on. So basically, with the help of the COM interface, you're actually capable of importing some data from, for example, from an Excel sheet into KISSsoft, run some calculations in the background, and then give out the results, for example. Then you probably all know KISSsoft has a lot of reports or summaries, let's say calculation summaries. All these reports can be edited. You can even add your own company-specific reports that include KISSsoft variables in it. And then there is a general interface. Probably you've all heard of it. For example, we have interfaces to CAD programs like SolidWorks, Siemens NX, and so on, and even to some FE calculation programs, and even to multi-body dynamics tools. Okay, so maybe we can start, and on the next slide you will see the first example that I'm going to show you is how to add your own company-specific cutters and maybe include some grinding allowances for the pre-manufacturing or for the pre-machining. You can enter your company-specific tool numbers into the database. Of course, you can enter the tool-specific parameters such as tool heights, radii, and so on. You can add some protuberance tools, stopping tools if needed. And as I said, you can even define your user-defined grinding allowances, which are then module-specific. Another advantage of working with KISSsoft customizing is that you can also deactivate stuff that you actually don't want to see in the software. For example, if you don't have certain cutter profiles, you might as well just remove them from the list and thus make your work environment more comfortable. If you are doing gearbox sizing or gear sizing in general, gear sizing in particularly, you can also consider your own cutters in the fine sizing. And for example, if you don't have a tool, let's say for module 4.25 for gears, then KISSsoft will also not generate any solutions for, let's say, for a cutter which you don't have in the company. You can see that these cutter lists or example files how such a cutter list can be defined. You will find them in KISSsoft based root directory in the folder called .dat. And I'm just going to show you maybe some examples. If I go to my KISSsoft installation, now you might have your installation on a network. It's not a problem. I have a local installation, so I go to Windows C Programs, and you will find here the folder called .dat. And you will see this is a, let's say, very huge list of things, of information that we provide you together with the installation. So you don't have to know which file means what, but I would like you to be able to find certain information that you require. For example, if I open this file, you will see that there are some cutter lists provided here. This is a cutter list according to the DIN standard. You can see here the module, pressure angle, and so on. What's important for you to know is that you shouldn't be really modifying files which are inside these directories, because you can actually not revert them. If you will really lose information if you, for example, change something in these files. So this is the reason why we have created the so-called ext directory, or for external files. All these things that you find inside here are actually for you. So if you deinstall KISSsoft, this is actually the only folder that is not being deleted, because here you have your files inside. And you can see there are places here for .dat files, for report files, RPT, and these are the so-called special reports which you can generate yourself. So much about this. So what I'm going to try to do now is I have prepared some files for you just to show how these things work. Just have to exit from the presentation. And Actually, all these files that I'm going to be using today, we're going to provide you probably on Monday as a link so you can download them and also test maybe some of the examples that we have been doing together in this presentation. So we're not leaving you without information. So the first topic, custom tools. You can see that I have here two files which I have prepared. Sorry. So we can have a look now, maybe first at the cutter list. And you can see I have here two cutters, which I can actually call. Maybe this is my KISSsoft cutter, and I'll call it KISSsoft cutter number 1. And do the same thing for the next entry. Number 2. And you can see that these cutters are now here for normal module 1 and 1.25. So I can now just save this file, close it, and we're also going to have a look at grinding allowances for the pre-manufacturing. And here in this list here, you will see that we have the grinding allowance, which you will find here in this row, which is normal module dependent. So for example, for gears with normal module 1, we have 90 microns of grinding allowance. So now I can just copy these two files. And as I said before, I have to place them into the KISSsoft root directory, but not into .dat files because I don't want to be overwriting original KISSsoft stuff. I'm going to be using the ext folder. So how does this actually work? KISSsoft first looks, do you have some custom data inside the ext folder? If yes, it's going to use it. And if not, it's going to jump back to the standard .dat files and report files and so on. So I go now to the ext folder, and add my two .dat files to import my cutters and grinding allowance. Now, another thing I would like to mention, in this particular example, we are going to be modifying KISSsoft databases, and this is a procedure where you need write permissions. And Windows has made it more complicated for us. For example, you do not have per standard write permissions in the program directory. That means that if I want to write something in this specific folder, I have to start KISSsoft as admin. It's in German, but what it basically says, now I'm the administrator. I have now unique rights. And now you can see we have started KISSsoft. Just change the language to English, extras, English. So now you can also understand something here. And now I can go to the database tool. And KISSsoft asks me, do you want to open the database with write permissions? Sure, why not? And here you will find the full list of databases that we provide you. Here you can define the material data, the cutters, grinding allowances, and so on. I know that the cylindrical gear module starts with Z as format, so I can just sort everything according to the first letter, and you will find all these databases here starting with the Z letter should be at least somehow related to the gears, except for the V-belt here. So what I'm particularly interested in now are the hobbing type cutters. So I just open it, and you can see there are some predefined cutters according to DIN. And let's say you want to remove it. You don't want to be having cutter lists that, well, which you don't have the tool for. So I just might as well select them both. And with the minus button that you can see down here, you can remove these rows. Well, we're actually not really deleting something. We're just hiding these entries. But you can later on reactivate them right here. So I will add now a new cutter list and call it KISSsoft cutters. And now it asks me for the .dat file. So I enter these 3 dots, and you can see if you have done everything right, you will find that KISSsoft jumps automatically into ext.file. And here we have the cutter list, so I can just double click on it. And if I might want to make some changes right now quickly, I can just go on the edit button and I can edit the values if I need to do it. But I will just confirm it with OK and say save the database. The database has been successfully saved. So we can close it. Now maybe we want to add the machining allow, the grinding allowance for cylindrical gears. Here the same story. I go on the plus button and say these are KISSsoft grinding allowance. Press on the three dots here and add the grinding allowance .file. And now I can confirm and press save. And I can now actually close everything. So if we go now to a cylindrical gear pair example, gear pair number 1, example number 1, and now I can go to the tab reference profile, and in the machining I can now see that I have added a new entry, KISSsoft grinding allowance. That's okay. And tool selection, I will not be using a reference profile for the gear, but I want to be using the hobbing type cutters. And now he asks me, do you want to input the cutter list from the database? Yes. And now is an interesting point. We cannot see our defined cutters. Why not? Because in this particular example, number 1, the module is by coincidence 6. And if you have checked the list, we don't have cutters in this, well, for module number 1. So actually I need to recheck why it didn't add the tool. So I'm going to go back there and to check selection hobbing type cutters, and actually it didn't work. So I press again on the plus button and try it anew. Maybe I just didn't save it properly, but we will see. And again here I add the cutter list, press OK, save. Now we can see if it works. It should be now inside. And take tool from database, and actually you can see it now. The cutter list appears, so I can select it, and you can see for the module number 6 we do not have any matching cutters. But if I remove this restriction button, you can now see the both cutters that I have defined, and they have module 1 and module 1.2. This allows you actually quite practically to have control, let's say, of the whole design procedure to see, okay, can we actually manufacture this? Do we have a cutter? Or if there is nothing in the list, you might need to contact your boss and say, hey, we need another cutter. So we can now continue to the next topic, manufacturing drawings and reports. We have now looked at the .dot files. Now we are going to look at RPT files. RPT stands for, well, report, clearly. And you will find a huge list of reports in the KISSsoft root directory under RPT. These reports you can then modify according to your needs, and at the end you can place them into the external RPT directory. Maybe about the convention, how do we name our reports? Well, the first thing you're going to see in the report naming is actually the module that you're using. You probably ask yourself, well, how do I know how KISSsoft names these? And you can actually test it quite simply. If I, for example, save a KISSsoft file, save as, you can see that cylindrical gear pair, it's the module Z12, so Z012 is the report corresponding to it. You will also find at the end of the report file a letter. Mostly the letter stands for the language. We have 7 languages in KISSsoft, and every report which has an E letter behind it will probably be English. actually quite sure. And so now the next challenge for me is, let's say if I want to modify a manufacturing drawing, we go to, I can just select again this example one, go to graphics, geometry 2D, manufacturing drawing, gear one. And now this is quite a practical drawing, let's say for your manufacturing, because you have here the gear data that must be manufactured and you have the allowances like base tangent length and so on. This is important for the guy who is manufacturing gears. And let's say you want to modify it and you want to add here maybe the center distance for this corresponding gear so that your dear fellow friend also knows how to mount the gears. So you can do these kind of things, and for that you need to go first of all into the KISSsoft root directory again, and you will find a lot of reports stored here. Now, I must confess the list is quite cryptic. It's maybe if you haven't seen it before, maybe it's not very easy to understand, okay, which file should I take now? But remember I showed you for single gear calculations or for cylindrical gear pair calculation, we have the module Z012. And for a single gear calculation, the module is actually Z010. If you wish, we can also provide you a list of nomenclature so that you can easily find the right report which you are using. So I'm interested now in the manufacturing drawing, and I know that it should be under Z010 gear. I have actually prepared these files already so that we can save maybe some time. Custom manufacturing drawing, and you will find that the name of this report is Z10 gear N, and the language stands for E as English. So I can open this file and I can now alter it. I can say this is my manufacturing drawing, and actually in this particular example I have already entered the center distance. Well, it's not very bad, but I'm just going to explain you later how you, this is the most important part, how you get the right variable name for the center distance, because this is actually what KISSsoft is using in the source code as variable name for center distance. Let's have a look. What did I add into this report? Well, first of all, I said it's about the center distance here. It's A, and what is this here? This actually shows you the format of the variable. This tells you that it has 10 places for the integer number and 3 places after the comma separator. And F stands for floating, so floating number. And now the center distance, you of course, you don't know at the beginning how is the center distance internally defined in KISSsoft. So how do you get to this variable, internal variable name of KISSsoft? There are many ways to do it. You could, for example, just compare maybe two calculation files and see and change the center distance and maybe somehow find it with a text editor. But we also have lists in Excel for the parameters. But I'm going to show you maybe also another way how to do it is if you know in which report the center distance appears, then you can also just open such kind of a report and then just search for the center distance, and you can see here that this is a classical tooth geometry report. And actually here you will not find the center distance because it's for a single gear. You need to go to the report for a gear pair calculation. Sorry, but you can see here that the transfers module, for example, is internally called zsgeo.mt. And maybe another thing, how is this to be understood? You see, sometimes it's called ZR, sometimes it's called ZP. Well, ZP stands for gear pair, so P stands for pair, and now the difference between a mechanical engineer and the informatics guy is that the mechanical engineer starts counting from 1, but the informatic guys, they start counting with 0. So that would mean 0 would mean for the informatic guy that this is actually the first pair. So if you imagine a gear train where you have several pairs with the index 0, you say, are you talking about the first pair or the second pair? And if you have set R, R stands for Rad in German. This is the gear body itself. And here an index 0 would mean this is gear 1, and the index 1 would mean this is gear 2. Okay, so now I can just save this file. And what do I have to do? As last time, I just need to copy this file into the KISSsoft ext folder. And that's what I'm going to do. Go back to KISSsoft root directory, ext, and I have to put it now into the RPT folder. So I add it here. And now I can start KISSsoft, calculate again, go to graphics, geometry, manufacturing drawing gear 1. And if I'm lucky, then it also should appear there. So if I scroll up, you can see that I have changed the naming of the report. It's my manufacturing drawing, and I have added my custom variable here, which is the center distance. You can modify any kind of report in KISSsoft and well, modify it such that you have maximized your comfort while using our software. Okay, so the next topic is going to have a look at how to modify the result windows in KISSsoft. What do I mean by that? So if I'm right here, press calculate, you will find the results. These are the standard results. And now you can imagine, let's say, if you're a gear pump manufacturer, you're selling gear pumps, then, well, you might want to add the transport volume of the medium that you're actually pumping, maybe somewhere here in the result window. And this is something you can also do with Customize. There are several files which are a bit different. Well, you can basically alter the result windows in 2 ways. The first way would be to use the nomenclature module, then result.rpt. That would add custom results, so your results after our standard output. After our standard output means it will actually appear after these safeties against micro-pitting and so on. Alternatively, you can customize the entire result window, and then you will use the format res-e, and then you really have to check that you enter all the variables that are of relevance. You can actually see here a screenshot and you can find here your own parameters that you want to show. Let's make a small example. Again, I will keep this open, and what I'm actually looking for is this folder here. I go to topic number 3, result window, and I have prepared a couple of files for you. If I open this file again with a text editor, you will see that I want to add my own results. And what do you have here? I just wanted to add active tip diameter, active root diameter. Both of these, well, why do we have 2 entries? Clearly, we have gear 1 and gear 2. And now you can also see that the variable name, let's say for this active tip circle, is ZR for the first gear with index 0 and for the second gear, the index 1. There is another ISO parameter here compared to the gear 1. This has something to do with internal gears. It depends a bit how you handle the values negatively or positively, and this is something internal what we are using, but you can find all these things in our reports and just copy paste. It's not a big deal. Well, I will just copy this file now again and find my KISSsoft root directory. It's again an RPT file, so I go to ext RPT and add my custom results. And if I now press calculate and everything went well, you will find that I was also able to integrate my own desired results into KISSsoft. And in the report file that I was using before, you can use the space button and adjust it in such a way that it really appears in the same column. I must confess I didn't take much time to format it, but you can do these kind of things. The next topic are rules. As I said, why do we need rules? Sometimes you might have some internal company restrictions for which gears are allowed, which qualities are allowed, and so on. So you can define rules which will at least warn the user if he had entered something incorrect or wrong or didn't pay attention to some things which might be important in your company. You can see the format of rules it's just a module name. So for example, Z010 would be a single gear pair and with the ending RLS, which stands for rules. You can program your old rules into KISSsoft. Now, please pay attention. Rules are the exception which do not belong to the ext folder. You just have to add them into the templates folder in KISSsoft. Well, let's maybe make an example. Let's say what I want to do is in my actually quality is maybe a bit a special topic because as you know, the higher the number for quality, the worse is actually the gear quality. So the bigger are your deviations. But what I want to do now is, let's say if the user enters here a gear quality of 8, I want to give him a message. Sorry, my friend, the quality is much too low. We don't accept it in our company. So for that, I have prepared a small file for you. You will find it under the topic 4, custom rules. And if I open this with a text editor, you can see it's actually quite straightforward. The first thing you're going to say when you program such a rule is, should it be done before the actual KISSsoft calculation or after? What is the difference? For example, if you enter something in the interface and you want to check a value such as quality, you don't need to run the calculation to check it because you just, before you calculate, you can see is this entry higher than 7 and accordingly act. But you can also, for example, check the calculated center distance. If it's too much, you can also generate such a message. What I'm doing here now is that I'm using the function which is called assert. Assert means that if this value, so if this condition here is not true, then there will be a message which tells you, attention, quality of gear 1 is too low. So I copy this rule now, and again I go now to my KISSsoft root directory. I go to the folder called template and add my specific rule right here, module name .rls. And now if everything worked fine, I should be getting an error message. Let's enter the quality 8, press calculate, and now you can see that we have a customer specific warning. Attention, gear quality is too low. And below here, you can actually see why this message was produced. This message is called by a rule in file C program files template and RLS. So this gives you the possibility to actually warn your users or add some company specific things into the whole interactive calculation process. The next topic is general initial settings. The initial settings are all defined in the KISSsoft root directory where you have installed it. And the file that you must be modifying for that is the kiss.ini file. What can you do with it? For example, you can set the paths for where your databases are located. You can maybe make some initial settings, what font size should be used. If you're using some low or high resolution, you can predefine the standard language that you're interested in, some report format settings. And what I'm going to show you today is the possibility to add logging. This is basically a license management for you so that you are kind of aware who is blocking, let's say, the license and find the bad guy in the company. This is done just by, if I go to KISSsoft root directory, and you will find this kiss.ini file right here. If I open it, you can see a bit the structure of this file. You can set here the paths, for example, where's your database located. For example, if you're using a single user dongle license, so no network license at all, you might imagine that you, at the end, if you're a bigger company, you might have something like 20 installations. And imagine if everyone is modifying the databases, adding some material and so on, then you might consider maybe replacing the ini file for all users that have installed KISSsoft, where you set a central database which is located on the server. Might have also some disadvantage. For example, if you have no internet then or no server connection, you don't have at all access to the databases, but this is something you must manage and optimize. But the possibility is there. Sometimes if you don't want to check for updates due to some reasons, or you get, every time you start KISSsoft, you get a pop-up, do you want to update? And it really starts to annoy you. You don't want to see it anymore, so you could actually deactivate these things. But this is something that I personally do not suggest you to do. You should be always on the latest patch level. But what I'm going to show you now is the logging. So let me just open a file that I have prepared, customizing and KISSsoft initial rules. I open this KISS-ini file, and here you can see that, just a second, didn't work. I have to go to the German version first. Yeah, that's the file I was looking for. So if I open it, you will see at license logging, I have now set the option to 1. And option 1 means that there is actually a log file being generated. And the log file will then be stored under C users desktop log. I just created an arbitrary folder and call the file name log.txt. And before I show you how it works, let us also talk about this topic here. Now, probably some of you guys who have been using a network version sometimes experienced an unpleasant situation where you start KISSsoft and it says all licenses are blocked. This might happen because there is really someone actively using now KISSsoft, but the other point is when your colleague goes to lunch at 12 o'clock and just forgot to close KISSsoft, your license is actually being blocked without being really used. And that's rather an unpleasant situation. So you can either go to the cafeteria and find your colleague, or you can delete the cookie that is stored in the access directory, but this is something for if you really need to do it. But the timeout actually defines you the number of minutes after which the inactive user will be kicked out, or the license is being set free. And you can see per standard, it's actually exactly 2 hours. So if you're not using KISSsoft network license for 2 hours, the session is being closed. So let's make a small test. I will now copy these initial settings, and please, if you do such things, before you overwrite the original initial setting file, please make a backup, because this is something you can't really restore unless you deinstall KISSsoft and install it again, a fresh copy of it. So I go to C, Programs, KISSsoft, and place my initial settings file. So now I can actually close KISSsoft and reopen it again. Sorry, and I will just load now the cylindrical gear example. As we know, cylindrical gears example number 1, press calculate, and if I now see I have created a folder on my desktop, this is the path that I have specified, and you can see KISSsoft generated generated me a log file, and in this log file I can see my initials, Ilya Zikor, and the time when I have opened the license. You can see today I have been giving several meetings, so I have here different session times, and also at the end you see which modules I have been are actually present in my license in this particular case. It's a huge list. I have a full license. Okay, so much about initial settings. The next topic is maybe a bit more spectacular because you can really program your own dynamic interface, which will allow the communication between different applications. For example, if you're using MATLAB and you really like the nice plots in MATLAB, you can just import some input data directly in MATLAB or through a script as you wish, then run some calculations and, for example, plot in MATLAB the transmission error and so on and so forth without actually even opening the KISSsoft interface. The same possibility goes for Microsoft Office products such as Excel, Visual Basic, or PHP, Java, and so on and so forth. So this allows you really to communicate. Why are these things advantageous, or why should one do it? I'll give you 2 cases to motivate you. The first case, for example, is that the guy in the manufacturing, I mean, you might be working research and development, you have had a KISSsoft training, you know how to use the program, but the guy who is actually testing the gear quality down in the manufacturing, maybe you don't really want to, maybe he doesn't really need to have an advanced KISSsoft training for 4 days just to know how to generate the reports for the deviations and allowances and so on. And in this particular case, you could just program a very simple Excel sheet where the manufacturing guy, just enters module, number of teeth, if there is a modification or something, then just press calculate, and in the background, KISSsoft will give him the desired results without even having to open KISSsoft. I'm gonna demonstrate you a small example that I have created. At the beginning, it was an example for a customer, but then we decided together with him that we're going to make it open source. So if you're interested, you can also download it with the link that you will be provided with on Monday. COM interface. I'm also providing you a workshop file as PDF too that really explains how to do such things in KISSsoft. So you can see now I have Excel started. I can enter here some gear data like normal module, number of teeth, maybe 19. And what I want to calculate is the center distance, maybe some tooth form diameters to check. And I also want to plot the tooth form directly into the Excel sheet. So I press calculate, and you can see it's really magic. It happens so fast, and you don't even have to open KISSsoft. So you get the results that you are willing to give out here, and you also get our tooth form graph. So quite a nice function if you're keen, let's say, in programming a bit. How is such a thing done in general? If I go to the developers tools and go to the macro, you see I just written a macro which is called calc geometry. So I can just say edit it, and now you can see the source code. This is quite a simple example that you see here, but you can see that you might invest some time to program all this. I think in 1 or 2 days you have this thing programmed, depends a bit on your programming skills. And how it works, this is Visual Basic. Now I say start the KISSsoft instance, now get the module cylindrical gear pair calculation. That's actually quite a cool function. The next one, load a template file. So that actually allows you to reduce the amount of variables that you have to set. You just load a template file with already predefined variables, and you just alter the values that you must alter, right? So in this particular case, I have defined mn as a floating number, and I set the variable mn equal to the entry in my worksheet in Excel, cell, row, and column. And this is the actual interface. I say call a KISSsoft function. The KISSsoft function is called set variable. And what it does, it just takes your value from the Excel worksheet and sets it directly into the KISSsoft interface. Also, if desired, you could show the KISSsoft interface, but you don't have to. You can do such kind of things completely in the background. So quite a cool thing. And also another possibility, or let's say another reason to use this interface is I had a customer, they decided to buy KISSsoft, and they had something like 1,200 geared pair datas in Excel sheets. So imagine if you buy KISSsoft, normally, let's say if you use the standard process, you have to enter 1,200 gearings in KISSsoft, and that's really time consuming. Whereas with this COM interface, you can just run a batch mode. You can say for files from 1 to 1,200, read in the data from an Excel sheet and save the file as KISSsoft. And you'd be really surprised. They just generated 1,200 gearings from their Excel sheets within 15 minutes, which is quite an impressive performance. So I'm happy that at least you've heard that such thing exists, and I hope that if you have flair for programming, you will be able to use it as well. And I'm actually coming to the end. My last topic for today is the dynamic user interface, which basically allows you to modify the whole KISSsoft interface. Now we have different file formats. We have seen the rules, RLS. We have seen the reports, RPT, .files, .dat, and this interface file has the ending called KUI. It stands for KISSsoft User Interface. So what do I want to do? Let's say in my particular case or in my company, all the materials that I have selected for a gear pair have to be tested. And the guy who tests them needs to tell me also when were these materials evaluated and if they had passed the tests or not. This is just an example, right? But in this particular case, I would really like to add my own variable here into the interface after material and lubrication, which is basically called the material testing. And there I can write my initials and maybe the date when the material tests have been performed. So that's what I'm going to do now. I am going to open the KUI file that I have prepared for you. KUI basic data, and this is how the interface file looks like. This is now for cylindrical gears. You can recognize there's an element called module. You enter normal module, then the pressure angle, hand of gear, helix angle, center distance, and so on. And what I've actually changed is directly in this group for material, I have added my own variable, which has the type string. Well, string because you're going to write something there. It's not a number. It's just a text. With the label, I can say how it appears in KISSsoft, so material testing. And this is very important. This is the definition, the internal definition or the variable name that is going to be accepted in KISSsoft. So mat test is my variable name. Well, I'm not finished. Even if I have added this new entry into the KISSsoft interface, I might want to include it in the classic KISSsoft reports. For that, I also need to modify the report, the corresponding report file. I will add it into additional data, so it's going to be somewhere at the end of my report. And if I open it, you can see it, that it's actually very simple. I just added for a single gear calculation a string. Actually, this string, this I don't really need. I just need how it appears in the report, what kind of a variable is it. %s means it's a string, and this is the connection to the interface, because remember I told you this is the internal parameter name inside KISSsoft. So I go File, Save, and I can now first copy this file and put it into my KISSsoft root directory, KISSsoft 2016 X. Now be careful here, it's a report file, so I have to place it in the RPT folder where all my other result windows and stuff like this were. And now I need the interface file that I have created, so I copy it and place it in the corresponding KUI folder, so copy paste. And now if I go to KISSsoft, I can now just maybe first load another example. I might want to close and start KISSsoft again to see if it works. Okay, change the language to English. Now I start a cylindrical gear example. And you can see what changed is that I have now really my own input here that I have defined. For the 18 Chronimo 76, I can now enter, let's say, material tested and accepted on 8th of December 2016. So I can now press calculate and go to the report file, and you will find somewhere in the end where we have these additional data, you can see that this thing also appears then in our classic report and allows you thus to really generate your own entries and add them or include them into the reports. With this, I would like to finish my rather short web demonstration about KISSsoft customizing. I mean, clearly, this is not all, and the possibilities are really huge. And this is also one of our philosophies that we, when we provide software, we want to give the users also the freedom to customize it, modify it according to your company standards, and thus make your whole workflow much easier and, let's say, maybe more comfortable.